The honor is mine, Rick. Thanks for having me here, and I wouldn't miss it. It's the only symposium or show that I X out, put on my calendar a year in advance. So glad to be here.
Well, we appreciate the support. For the purposes of this interview, Andy, I think I'm going to skip the normal thing that you and I do about gold and silver. It has occurred to me that people who have come to this conference because they already understand the thesis around precious metals ownership. So rather than beating that horse, what I thought I'd really like to do is dig into your brain and tell people about the mechanics of buying and selling and storing bullion. I consider bullion myself, and I describe it to my clients as foundational liquidity. As you know, I think liquidity is a very good thing. And one of my favorite personal forms of liquidity is, in fact, in bullion. And I want to talk about how to do it, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely, and it's interesting too because you call it liquidity. I've always called it wealth. I guess they're the same thing, one and the same. So we're coming at it from a very similar perspective.
Yeah, I get that, and I think that segues very well into the first question. First of all, what to own? What are the relative advantages and disadvantages between owning gold versus owning silver, and if you care, versus owning platinum and palladium? Who are they suitable for? What are the attributes? What are the downsides in each class of precious metals ownership?
Sure. So platinum and palladium, first and foremost, to me are an investment. I look at gold and silver as wealth. Platinum and palladium lack the historical context that gold and silver do. Now, you can talk about reasons why platinum and palladium might be a good investment, and a lot of it has to do with where it's mined in Russia and in South Africa. But to me, first and foremost, I think I would not advise people to own platinum and palladium until they have a foundation in gold and silver. For me, ultimately, the place to be ultimately is in gold. And in April of 2019, when the Bank of International Settlements reclassified gold as the only other tier one reserve asset next to US dollars and treasuries, I think it sets the table for where gold ultimately ends up in the financial system. And so I think ultimately the place to be is gold. But there's a very compelling argument for silver, Rick. We had a record year last year, and in over $500 million in sales, 97% of every transaction we did was silver. And I'm not joking, that is an accurate number, 97%. The demand for silver is incredible. The duality in applications or in demand, whether it be a growing green and digital footprint in silver versus a renaissance, if you will, in monetary demand for silver, creates a very unique environment. The environment is a ratio between gold and silver price wise right now at about 83 to 1, and that's historically out of whack. When you look at price anomalies, when you look at distortions in historical prices, the difference between gold and silver right now at 83 to 1 is in rarefied air. Geologically, for thousands of years, the ratio was 16 to 1. For the last few hundred years, it's averaged about 42 to 1. And I talked with Keith Newmeyer about that. I was at dinner with him a few weeks ago, and he said to me, look, globally, it's coming out of the ground at a 7 to 1 global ratio. It's being mined at 7 ounces of silver for every 1 ounce of gold, yet it's priced at 83 to 1. And it's averaged 42 to 1 for the last 100 years and 16 to 1 for thousands of years before that. So, look, the bottom line is simply this. To me, silver is the value proposition in this industry of a generation. It is wildly undervalued. It has huge utility in industrial and monetary applications, and they're expanding. So I think silver is a pathway into getting a whole lot more gold. And I think ultimately the place to be is gold, or it wouldn't have been reclassified tier one in 2019. The only other tier one assets being US dollars and treasuries. So it's going to have a role. And so when I say it's a pathway into getting more gold, one way to do that is to own silver at an 83 to 1 ratio. And as it regresses to its mean somewhere in the 40 to 1, or maybe even towards its geologic mean right now of 7 to 1, you convert to gold. So I think preservation lies with gold. And I think opportunity is with silver. I like them both. I consider them both to be wealth, both to be money, but I think the real opportunity is in silver. But ultimately, I'd like to see people in gold.
Very clear. For either gold or silver, or gold and silver, can you discuss briefly the difference between buying and owning bullion rather than buying and owning bullion coins?
Right. So, it's funny because I basically look at them both the same way, whether it be bullion bars or ingots made by refineries or by sovereign governments like the Royal Canadian Mint or the Perth Mint, or coins made by the Canadian government or the Canadian Mint. Really, the distinction.
Do they have similar markups and similar liquidity?
They always did have similar markups and similar liquidity. And that's kind of what I'm getting at. The distinction right now is in what's going on with the premium on sovereign coins. I'm one of only 24 US Mint authorized resellers in the world. And it's an honor we're very proud of. And I'm high up on the food chain with the US Mint and all of the distributors. And so if I were to sell Silver Eagles right now at $12 or $13 over the price of silver, I'm going to be probably the lowest in the United States. The premiums on Silver Eagles have gone parabolic, and it hasn't happened yet in gold items, but the same thing is true with the Canadian Maple Leaf, with the Philharmonic. All of the 1 ounce silver sovereign coins have reached levels that are 2 to 3, sometimes 4 times what I've seen in my entire career. Now, the bars have gone up a lot too, but not to the same degree the coins have. And it speaks to, I guess, the inefficiency of the mints not being able to produce the quantity of coins that are demanded by the public. In the case of the US Mint, they're not allowed to go into the open market and pay more than the average price of silver. And so they've been having a hard time getting the planchets to make the 1 ounce coins. Bottom line is this: if I had my choice, I would own 1 ounce or sovereign mint coins. They do have benefits. The biggest benefit in owning the sovereign mint coins, other than the demand, I guess you could argue liquidity is pretty much the same, slightly better with the smaller utility pieces like 1 ounce versus a 100-ounce bar. But the big reason, or the big advantage, I guess, is in privacy. If you sell more than 1,000 ounces in bar form or in generic round form, a 1099 is filed by the dealer. It is a 1099B miscellaneous income form is filed when those are sold back to the dealer. If the dealer were to take in unlimited amount of American Eagles or Canadian Maple Leafs or Austrian Philharmonics, there is no 1099 issued. Doesn't mean taxes aren't due. But the bottom line is that in and of itself creates a big demand for the sovereign coins. Other than that, look, they have the same amount of gold or the same amount of silver in them. One is made by a government, one is made by a refinery, typically. But I have no problem with the bars. In fact, I have for the last 6 months have been recommending that people buy kilo and 100-ounce silver bars and 1 ounce gold bars. They carry the least markup. They are not too big to diminish liquidity, especially in the case of the kilo bar, 32.15 ounces, about the size of an iPhone. But it gives, I think you're paying too high of a premium in a historic context. I've been doing this for 33 years. I've never seen premiums as high as they are on coins, ever. And that goes both ways, by the way. I mean, I'm bidding north of $8 or $9 over the price of silver for Silver Eagles. But it goes both ways, but I've never seen them this high, ever. And either it's a whole new reality or it's not. And I am favoring getting the biggest bang for the buck without being penny wise and pound foolish. I could tell people to buy 1,000-ounce silver bar and they'd save money, but I think the loss of flexibility is not quite commensurate with the savings that you're getting. So 100-ounce, kilo, 10-ounce in silver, 1 ounce gold bars in gold, that is going to be the most conservative way to go. The dealers like myself make the least amount of money on them. And so it's the best value to the public, bar none. And it's what we've been recommending pretty much exclusively now for the entire year, the last 5 months.
Can we talk a bit about storage and safekeeping, both from the point of view of economical storage and safekeeping, from the point of view of the ability to buy into and sell from various forms of storage and safekeeping, and also particularly about security? You know, if you're buying gold to preserve your family's wealth and the storage facility goes to facility heaven, that's problematic for you. So if you could address the whole topic briefly of storage, safekeeping, and security.
Yeah, as far as storage facilities are concerned, we partnered 12 years ago with Brinks, and I've chosen Brinks for several reasons. They're a massive company, I think a Fortune 100 company, multinational. They do everything by the book, 100%, and I've never even seen 1 ounce of gold or silver misappropriated ever. And then we employ third-party auditing. When you choose a storage facility, I think paramount number one is that you don't want to store it in the same facility that the precious metals company is running their business out of. There needs to be a separation, sort of church and state in this respect, where you want to go with a company that has a balance sheet big enough to be able to withstand a slowdown in the economy or whatnot. You want to go with a company that is known for being synonymous with security and safety, and that's why we chose Brinks, and I'm very glad that we have. You want to be able to go to the facility and retrieve your product if need be, and I think that's something. You want to know where it is being stored. There are companies out there that tell you they work with very reputable companies, but they won't tell you where it is, and I think that's a problem. We tell our clients, look, we have a relationship with the Brinks Vancouver, Brinks Montreal, Brinks Toronto, Miami, Los Angeles, Salt Lake City, and New York. And if you want to go retrieve your metal, you can. You fill out a form, you go pick it up. But I think the best place to store it is on your own person. You know, most people, Rick, aren't like you and I, who the public associates with gold. And so, you know, it's an issue of privacy, of safety. When we send product to people, as an example, we send it in a very nondescript box with supplemental insurance. In other words, if I send you a box of $50,000 worth of gold, I'm going to insure it for $500 through UPS, and supplementally through Lloyd's of London for $49,500 with no identifying markings on the box. So no one knows that you just received a box, $50,000 insured by the carrier, to your door. And so we start from that standpoint of making sure that the metal that we send to you doesn't arouse any suspicion. And then, look, most people aren't in the limelight talking about gold and silver all the time, so they don't need to worry about it. You hide it, you get a safe, or you bury it under a floorboard or in the attic under some insulation. A paint can you buy at Home Depot and splash paint on it and put it in the basement with your other paint cans, or bury it in your backyard under a tree and become a midnight gardener. I think in general, if you can take possession of it and hold it, you're better off. You don't need to pay a company like mine storage fees. The difference is that, you know, one, it's insured if it's with the storage company. You won't be able to get your metal insured even with a company like Chubb or a really high-end insurance company. They won't insure precious metals. You can't put them on a rider. And so, you know, the only downfall of holding it yourself is the potential of theft or fire. But quite frankly, I think you have a better chance of being ripped off by the system than you do a burglar if you're just a person investing in precious metals. So definitely choose a company like Brinks if you're going to store it, third party, a big company that has a great track record. And if you're able to not lose any sleep at night and take a little time and get creative on storing it safely, that's the best way to do it. Keep it at home, have access to it when you need it.
If somebody does take the storage option, do you have a preference between allocated, segregated, and unallocated?
I would never, ever, ever choose unallocated. In fact, that was one of the prerequisites in our relationship with Brinks. And I wouldn't even ever choose allocated, ever. and including IRAs. And I don't work with the deposit. I encourage my clients not to work with the depositories with IRAs that only allocate to the program. The key here is segregation. That is the distinction. You must be segregated. I can tell you horror stories that I've dealt with, in particular with IRAs, where the silver was allocated to the IRA program, but not segregated to Rick or not segregated to Andy. And when, the key to the IRA, precious metals IRA, is the ability to take an in-kind distribution. So you say, hey, I'm nearing retirement. I'm old enough to take distributions out of my IRA. I want the metals sent to me that I bought in lieu of a cash distribution. It's called in-kind. And horror stories where I've seen clients buy premium items like Royal Canadian Mint 100-ounce bars, 500 of them, and get back dinged up generic Ishi bars that are worth hundreds of dollars less per bar, and the IRA custodian won't do anything about it because they only allocated it to the program. They did not segregate it. It's a really good point, because the bottom line is simply this: if you choose a third-party storage system, whether it be in an IRA or not, non-qualified funds, it must be segregated, not commingled, and not just allocated to the program. You want allocation and segregation, not just allocation. And that's the key to physical storage, so that there is no question that the metal that you bought or that you sent in is returned to you if and when you decide to do it. It's a really big deal. And the delineation between a good experience and a really bad one, potentially, with the third-party storage company.
That's very clear. Thank you for that. Finally, I want to talk about liquidity. You buy this stuff, you take delivery, we could talk about that. But more importantly, when you sell the stuff, what does somebody need to know about selling it back to you or selling it in the market? Is there a difference, as an example, between gold or silver that you've stored at home that has somehow come, quote, out of system in terms of your ability to resell it without dealer fear that the material is counterfeit? Could you talk something about liquidity and how investors need to plan for liquidity?
Yeah, so there really is no issue with liquidity with precious metals. In fact, I consider them to be the most liquid asset on the planet, in the respect that there's no clearing time or settling time as there is with securities. I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, it used to be T+3, I think it's now T+2, something along those lines. If you have metal in our storage facility, in one of our facilities, and you need to sell it, it'll happen instantaneously. More often than not, we'll be able to wire you on the outside at 48 hours, usually if it's within that day that we get the signed statement back from you, we'll send the wire immediately. So there's no liquidity issues whatsoever if it's in a storage facility. If it's at home, no. I mean, it's very easy. We assist on sending it back. In some cases, most cases, we'll send a UPS air bill to the client by email. With instructions how to pack it up. We can either arrange UPS to pick up the material, or you go to a UPS hub and send it back. Or we tell you how to do it safely by registered mail upon receipt. If there's any question whatsoever about authenticity, we have the sophisticated machinery that tells us down to 1,000th of a gram what the content of the coin or bar is. And so, look, I've been doing this a long time and have seen anything counterfeit maybe 2 or 3 times in $7 billion in transactions. So it's a very rare occurrence. But look, the bottom line is it's very, 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 very liquid. It's very private, and we can help you send it back to us and guarantee the highest bid price in the country by not charging a buyback commission. But I think it's important to understand one thing. This is why it's important to buy what you were talking about, whether it be sovereign coins or generic bars and rounds or things that people are used to seeing. Not buying numismatics or rare pieces or something that is esoteric, because gold and silver are homogenous. So whether you're at a dealer in Seattle, Washington, or Los Angeles, or in New York City, or in Salt Lake City, or in Minneapolis, or in Fort Lauderdale, or wherever you are, 99% of the value should be the same. There'll be variances in what the companies will pay you above spot or below spot or whatnot. But the bottom line is it's homogenous, and so you're not beholden to the company who you bought it from. And this is one of the reasons to buy things that are vanilla, that everybody wants. And then you won't have that issue at all. And in terms of planning for liquidity, look, you don't want to call someone up when you know you need to sell $2 million of gold to buy a home and you close in 24 hours. You want to give a little bit of a lead time if you're sending things back or even in a depository. So they're very, very liquid items, incredibly so, non-subjective at that. But in terms of lead time for something very important, 3, 4, 5 days heads up, hey, I need this without fail in my bank account by this next Thursday or I'm in trouble. Great. Just don't call me Wednesday afternoon and say that. Other than that, they're as liquid and as easily retrieved, whether it be to take possession of or to sell out of a depository or from your home as can be.
Andy, thank you very much for this educational session. I'm delighted to be able to feature you at our conference, as we have for so many decades. Any final word you might have or any final offers you might have for our attendees?
So final word is, well, first of all, Rick, thank you. I mean, it goes without saying how much I appreciate being here and our relationship. And I'm very happy for you and your new endeavor, and I'm excited to be part of it. As far as what I can promise your attendees, I remember once you told me that I was crazy to put my cell phone number on my business card a long time ago. And I stopped doing that a while back because my phone would blow up all hours of the night from all around the world. But I'm going to give my personal email out, and that's Andy@milesfranklin.com. And if anyone comes from your show or hears this interview, I will guarantee them my personal service and the best price in the United States or in North America for your Canadian listeners on anything that they want. I will go out of my way to make it a very, very good experience. And, one of the things that I take for granted is reputation and track record. We've never had a customer complaint in 33 years, and yours certainly won't be the first. And I'll make darn sure of that by having them contact me personally. And any questions that they have, I'll answer them. Any items that they want to purchase, I'll make sure it's a good experience. Anything that they want to store, I'll help them do it. And that's out of great appreciation for our friendship and just being associated with the best show in the business, and looking forward to seeing you in a couple months down here, just about a mile away from my house. So I'll look forward to seeing you.